who are we? We are sex workers.
We are mothers. We are sisters.
We are caregivers.
We are brothers.
We are voters.
And we are human.
My name is Doti Ogutu. I'm a sex worker, I am a mother, and I'm also the Executive Director for the African Sex Workers Alliance, which is the regional network of African sex workers movement. By the age of 21, I was already married and widowed and a single mother living with HIV. This is my story, and so are several similar stories of other African sex workers whom I have met and I work with. Florence Wangeshi, for instance, is no longer with us. She's a victim of a brutal murder and amongst many murders that happened in Kenya recently.
Sasa mimi ndiye alikuwa deliberate yangu. Ndiye alikuwa ananilipia nyumba yangu. Sasa venye alienda ni kama mimi mwenyewe hata ni kama nguvu yangu ilipunguka kidogo. Ni kama nilianza kuwa na anxiety ya mafikiri ya wewe mtoto wangu.
These murders are not only happening here in Kenya. Across Africa, we have cases of sex workers' bodies being dumped along the streets, sex workers' bodies being found mutilated in hotel rooms, some even beyond recognition. This is the harsh realities of sex work in Africa.
My name is Melis Warku. I'm 38 years old and I'm a sex worker. I went out as usual to look for clients. I got one American. He promised to give me 8,000 shillings. And I said yes. We went to his house and there were 8 of them in the house. They started beating me and raping me in towns, all of them. And then after that, I didn't know. I found myself in Nairobi Women Hospital, where they told me they found me in Waiwaki Way.
I'm Namsi Allen. I'm a sex worker. I'm 25 and I have one kid. When I came from my village to town, I came when my friend got me a job to work in a bar. I worked in a bar for 4 months when I was getting nothing. And the boss could not allow us to say no to men. If the men came, you have to do what he says. You have to say yes. And you are getting nothing.
I'm Rachel Kavazes, the Executive Director of OSIEA Trust in Namibia Irongo region, which is a sex workers-led organization. It has been circumstantial that I became a sex worker. However, I've chosen it as a profession. I was 12 years back then, and there were issues of family, because of my sexual orientation, gender identity, and how I express myself in the community. But sex work has given me refuge to be who I am today. Some of all the experiences would be, the bad ones would be violence, stigmatization, discrimination, as I said, based on my sexual orientation, gender identity, and the way people perceive sex work should only be taken up by women. But it also became a role and a profession for transgender sex workers like me, as well as male sex workers.
My name is Mary Mogoro Idikeni. I'm a sex worker by profession. I'm a mother of 6. I was arrested. We were taken to court and we were sent to prison. Unfortunately, the reason why we were sent to prison, the same magistrate we met, he used to be our customer. But somewhere down the road, when giving him a lap dance, he came on himself. So he got very mad with us and he took it as a revenge. So he sent some policemen to come and arrest us. And there was no story. We are being arrested today. It was on a Thursday. On a Friday, we were taken to court. Immediately at 1, I was reporting in a prison.
My name is Omkokame Moseu. I come from Botswana.
and I work for the African Sex Workers Alliance. Experience of sex workers in Botswana, are not peculiar to other countries. Sex workers continue to be victimized, to be discriminated because of harsh laws, and sometimes, they never get to report, or we never get to talk about them for fear of being victimized, discrimination. So it is quite a painful, a quite difficult time to be in.
You see, with the kinds of violations, we had no choice but to mobilize and organize ourselves, to come together to try and protect our rights and claim our rights as African sex workers. We've come a long way as the African sex workers movement. We started off as a project hosted within the Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force, SWET, in Cape Town, South Africa. Our inspiration came at a time when we came together and held the very first African Sex Worker Conference in Johannesburg in 2009, and drew our inspiration from the Sisonke National Movement of Sex Workers in South Africa. But as the movement grew, we felt the need to become more independent and to become more liberated. So we moved to Kenya, where we are now hosted. First, it was individuals coming together because we needed to have a very strong foundation. We needed to have very strong activists at the core of the movement building. People have different skills and people have different expertise. So in as much as I might be good at the strategizing and the thinking, but there's a doer and there's a mobilizer and there's a fundraiser and there are different people. So it was about identifying these people. Who will then do what? And we formed a steering committee. Fine, there were a lot of skills that we lacked at the time. But there was one thing that we all had, was the passion and the commitment. And we said, this is enough to drive us forward. So we went and rallied in other partners from different organizations. And we brought people together, and together with other funders like Open Society, who had always been supporting us from the get-go. We worked together with them and we sat down and we were thinking, how do we then get this thing to become an organization? How do we even get money? So it was during the very first December 17 in 2010 that we thought, let us mark this event and see what the outcome will be. And it was amazing. We had over 2,000 people attending that event, commemorating a day of sex workers on the streets of Nairobi publicly, and they all came out from different parts of the world. And we were there and we were visible, and we just claimed that space. And since that time, we've had organizations and sex workers mobilizing themselves in different counties in Kenya. And the same thing started happening in other countries, in Uganda, in Nigeria, in Zimbabwe, in Botswana, in Namibia, countries that you'd never even dream of. In Mozambique, they speak Portuguese and we speak English. We don't even understand each other half of the time. But the fact that these are people who have gone and lived the same experiences that we have, that is the one thing that brings us together. And that is how the movement of African sex workers has come about. Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force, SWET.
SAS a MSM transgender organization.
Voice of Trust in Namibia, Irongo region.
Hoimas.
Hostess, Kenya Sex Workers Alliance.
Kisumu Sex Workers Alliance.
Keeping Alive Society's Hope.
Survivor.
Netha. Sisonke Botswana, Togo Sex Worker Organization. That is called AFAZ.
Sisonke National Movement of Sex Workers in South Africa. As a membership network, we derive our mandate from our members. It is from our membership that we get board of directors who then govern and steer the management of ASWA. Our board of directors, a majority of them are sex workers. But because of the lack of skills and expertise within the governance body, we then identify partners and allies that we work with that have knowledge and expertise around health, around governance, around policy, to then come on board and join the board of directors who are sex workers as advisors. These board members do not have voting rights. OSIEA, which is a fund that supports sexual health and rights in East Africa, was the choice of ASWA's hosting when we moved to Kenya. OSIEA provided us with a physical space, but also financial support that enabled us to run and implement our programs. Central to our programming, ASWA is a membership organization. Our membership was only focused in particular countries. We needed to have a more in-depth analysis of the issues sex workers are facing on the ground in order for us to build our regional strategy. Under the sea of red umbrellas, we conducted several sex worker rights marches to raise awareness on the rights of sex workers and speak against violations that sex workers were facing across Africa.
The measures that we are taking is we are working on decriminalization of sex work.
We have done this at multiple levels, both individual and organizational levels, also in efforts to promote and advance our call to decriminalization of sex workers.
As a social justice activist, for me it was of paramount interest to take leadership and to do activities that would help around issues of sex work improvement, around issues of recognition of rights of sex work. And I took it as a personal thing. You know, if I don't fight for my own rights, if I don't speak for my own rights, who would? And that's one of the things that really, moved me to be part of this.
One of the things that I think has paid off greatly has been the technical assistance for them to actually know how to run an organization. By engaging consultants to work with the groups, to be able to sit with them, down with them to say, what do we want to do? Starting from very basic, what do we want to do as this group of sex workers? They had no offices, now they have offices. Now they run drop-in centers around the countries where they operate. All those things is out of the technical support that we've been able to give them, coupled with leadership development and funding.
As a movement of sex workers, we believe that we are best placed to understand and address the issues that we face. And it's from these life experiences that we then craft up policies and strategies of how we will engage with governments and partners and bilateral funders. We work very closely with the Global Network of Sex Workers Project. Learning and sharing with the global movement has been instrumental in helping us craft our advocacy strategies and policies. But we bear in mind our African identity and keep our voices and our autonomy as African sex workers.
We didn't have funding. We were not even sure how to get funding.
Even trying to form an organization and saying that you will work with bar hostess and sex workers received resistance right from the beginning.
In the community, it has been a challenge for us even to be accepted as sex worker community. The police, as much as we are doing sensitization to them, it's a challenge because there are always transfers. When you go to the service providers, the ones you've sensitized and they've accepted that they will work with you as sex workers, as key population, they are also transferred.
Challenges we face are to do with the competition over clients with the female sex workers. Sometimes they find out that it's really very challenging for them to work with the male sex workers. Sometimes they think that we take their clients.
The challenge would be unifying and actually ensuring that we amplify our voices as African sex workers and have one advocacy goal to say that this is what we want as African sex workers.
In spite of the challenges, we have grown into a fiercely empowered female and male sex worker-led movement that drives justice and rights-based intervention for the benefit of our community. We can celebrate the achievements of ASWA by having 85 member organizations across 30 countries. This is a huge achievement, moving from individual organizations to forming national networks and strengthening the capacities of these national networks to be able to advocate and protect the rights of sex workers in their countries. We now question authority without any fear.
Before, when we were going for festive season, we could keep money, emergency money, to bail out sex workers because we knew the police was on the move all the time to arrest sex workers. But now we really dialogue and we are partners actually with them.
Before, they could be offended and they could not run to the police because for them, they thought that maybe for them they are discriminated. But as per now, they were our allies in security. They report to us, we go to them, we get evidence from them, okay? So we move together.
Previously, the main issues that sex workers used to raise was that police used to harass them so much, especially because their working hours used to coincide with our patrols, especially at night. But since we came in contact with the groups like Cash and also other groups, we are able to sit down and talk as brothers and sisters.
I have benefited. Obviously, the voice of one person cannot move anything. So I have benefited immensely in terms of numbers. I think we'd agree that numbers are power, or numbers, give a better representation. So I've benefited from that. I've benefited from conversations with them. I've benefited from having some people who also understand the movement, who understand the industry, and I've been able to learn, a thing about advocacy, a thing about identifying, and a thing about being proud and doing your work without fear of victimization, even in criminalized settings.
It makes us benefit about the whole program, as well as program activities like training, like the academic too. Togo will be part of the academy this year. That's very great. And so according to that, we're trying to fit our strategy and our goals with ASWA's one. Yeah.
Because they trained us with information, how to defend yourself, how to bargain for safe sex, or that, even the training for counseling. Then I said I can manage to be a peer educator.
There are so many now national guidelines. And one of the things that when we formed even the movement was, we'll have as many guidelines which has a government logo.
I would say it has paid off our work, how we've started the growth of a new movement. We've started the growth of activists who can occupy the social justice spaces and be able to articulate social justice issues, people who can challenge discrimination. I think it has paid off.
Where do we see ourselves 10 years from now?
Our dream is to make sure that the violations that are being perpetrated towards sex workers come to an end.
Environment where sex workers are treated with dignity and respect.
Nous voulons vraiment être une organisation incontournable par rapport à la question de santé et de droits humains relative au travail de sexe au Togo.
Will increase access to health services to sex workers and also will protect the lives of all sex workers.
I see ASWA in the next 10 years as a growing alliance, an alliance that voice for the voiceless.
We are going to be at the decriminalization level. We will get the decriminalization.